I'm Terri Malik.
And I'm Jared Treadway, and we're inviting you to co-create with us.
From our home base in North Central Texas.
We're hosting conversations that nourish our mental, emotional, physical, and spiritual intelligence.
We are about being spiritually physical.
And physically spiritual.
We are about inspiration.
And aspiration.
We are about involution.
And evolution. We're about self-exploration
and self-excavation. We are about each of us coming to know ourselves in our fullness and wholeness,
so that together we serve the expansion of human consciousness
with the gifts of our specific genius.
Welcome to 33 North, 96 West.
Hello, Jared, and I am excited to be here. This is our first virtual meeting rather than being in the studio since I have gone on the road. And so excited to be here again today with a topic and some energy that is really, really prevalent for me right now. So I did ask Jared if we could do a recording and just discuss this topic and see where it goes.
Yes, I'm excited to explore this that has been alive for you. And I think it's around some phenomenon that we have both experienced on our journey. So we'll have some juicy insight to share.
Okay. So stay tuned and bear with me as I try to articulate it to start out with, because there are so many moving parts to this and so many moving energies. So I would like to bring it into a little bit more succinct topic of conversation, if you will, or at least to get us started. The energies have been really strong from clients, students, colleagues, all kinds of energy that has come into my field through the various ways that I'm going to say it's kind of twofold. So I'm going to open up the topic by saying, or the conversation, by saying, on one side, and it's not even a side, but on one point, we'll put it that way. To one point, the energy has been, there are atrocities and travesties happening in the world, and this has been going on for a few years. This is not a new thing in the field at this time, according to the collective perspective. There are atrocities and travesties, and they continue to happen and continue to happen. And people looking at, from what I'm calling almost like not doing enough of what can I do? What actions can I take? What are we not doing that is causing the change that they wish to see in the world? So that's a big, big prevalent topic of conversation among society and the collective right now. Another point to that is I also would like to discuss those who have really committed to a path of becoming more and more self-aware, self-realized, developing their spiritual journey, their journey into knowing self and connecting with their higher self and their I am presence at a soul level. Another point in what is going on in the world is that many are looking for a measure of how to see that progress. And I want to see if there's a possible way we can conversate about this and tie together that what is happening in the world, as well as looking for a measure outside of yourself, are both ways of engaging in the outside world, looking at what's outpictured, without going within and looking at what is within. I think that's just where I'll leave that to get us started.
Okay, so my responses, at least initially, to the energy of what you've been experiencing that led you to this, the first thing that comes to me is for us to just kind of contemplate the history of the species. No. Yes, but no. So what I mean by that is we are all subject to conditioning, and we have all been offered paradigms for how to operate and move through the world, and for how to, as you said, measure success and what it means to be an effective citizen or member of a society. And so the very first thing for anyone who feels called to proceed along a spiritual path is to just understand that, what I just said. You are subject to conditions, and you are operating within the paradigms of history. If you proceed along this path, where you are going is beyond those things. There is no other way. So, be graceful with yourself and realize that for the next few years, as you begin to reformat, you are going to grapple with the relationship between a prior way of being and a new way of being. Are you in agreement with that concept so far, Terri?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes, that was.
Have you experienced that
stated
in your
wonderfully.
journey, Terri? Yes, and I have
Why,
too.
of course.
And everybody that I know of
Yes.
who has embarked on a spiritual journey has grappled with that. Some people have
Absolutely.
spiritual epiphanies, and there's an instantaneous shift in your energetic field, like in an instant, in a flash, like major insight and aha moment. In those situations, though, although the shift has been instantaneous, mostly your awareness of it and your capacity to maintain the frequency is going to oscillate. So while the shift was instantaneous, your awareness and your embodying it and grounding it will ebb and flow. And so it's okay.
Yes, it's integrating that into the form.
Yes.
It's integrating it into
And what
the physical.
I'm
into
going
the
to go
form.
ahead and say, we've arrived at a moment in our discourse on this podcast where I think I'm going to use really clear, strong language about what's happening when you embark on this process. You are being re-articulated. Your physical body is being remade in a new energy. There is no level of your apparatus that is not affected by this, and I mean this literally. Just imagine that, how wonderful and profound that is. So, that's the first thing I wanted to express. So, the second thing that I wanted to suggest that we discuss in the context of this is the relationship between your energetic countenance, your vibrational countenance, the frequency that you're emitting, and the manifestations that you witness. And the main thing is, the world you see outpictured around you is the result of our past consciousness. Because there are a couple of things, dynamics in this. One is that there is, for better or worse, a gap between consciousness and manifestation. Most humans are not at a place where they can instantaneously manifest. There's a bit of time between what you are imagining and conjuring and the manifestation of it in your physical experience. On the level of an entire species or a collective consciousness, obviously that's a much heavier, bigger ship to move. So when you say, well, I've been lining myself up and doing my work, but I'm looking outside and the world isn't changing, and why am I doing this? And it's not helping, it's not leading to anything. That's why, Terry, what you were saying is to look outside yourself for the evidence of your alignment is a no-no. Because it's going to set you back.
I like that. It's a no-no.
Now, on the flip
really
side of that coin, I'm also going to challenge all of us to claim our responsibility for the meanings things have. So as you proceed along this path, you will begin to realize that when you look out and let's say you see two people fighting on the street. Well, I just used a word, fighting, that comes with history. And I'm using that word because someone taught me what that word means, and someone taught me what it means to fight. And so for you, you may feel like there's negativity associated with fighting. And so you look at that thing and you feel like there's this bad thing happening in front of me. And so you allow that to affect your vibration and pull you down. But what I want to suggest to you is that you are not required to acquiesce or be coherent with what you have been taught that things mean. So part of our path is to clear that conditioning and become coherent with new paradigms. So that we're using our energy in support of the direction of the manifestation that we desire. So now I might be able to look at that situation with those two people fighting and say, there are two divine beings there before me, and they seem to be in some sort of dance. I don't have to claim it as a really heavy, negative, dark fight, a bad thing, a bad manifestation. Because actually, what I'm doing when I do that is I'm investing my consciousness in that idea of the bad, negative fight. And in my investment in that way, I am solidifying that idea in physical form before me, and I'm claiming that idea inside my own being and my own consciousness so that I see more of that.
I would like to use a phrase that I have used for years in my practice, and I find it interesting because for years I didn't recall or realize that I was using it, and then client after client would repeat it back to me and say, but as you say, and the message was always, everything is energy. So I would find it really interesting when they would repeat it back to me in their own journey and sharing about what they were experiencing and saying, but then I would remember Terri saying, everything is energy. So I want to support that. I want to use that phrase to support what you were just saying. So that scenario or situation that you see on the street, I am going, this is my thoughts, if you will. I would just say that these will be my thoughts in that observation at this point in my journey where I am is, well, there is some really excitable energy going on out there, and it is being exchanged between two people, and they are working through moving that energy through them, through them and out of them. That is really the only observation I am most likely going to have, rather than having the next level, if you will, of a judgment of it. It's just like, well, that's really interesting. Look at all that energy that they're kind of projecting out there. And because I see it as energy, I don't find myself in a position of needing to say that it's a positive energy or a negative energy or shame on them or anything like that. I'm not going there. It's just, okay, that's an interesting experience. Now, I also know if I am in the energetic field of that, say I'm in close proximity, we'll add to the example. They're outside by the sidewalk and I'm walking by the sidewalk. There is something I can do, and I can effect change by affecting the situation. I can do that. I don't necessarily jump into that. I'm not a person who really gets into other people's business, so to speak. But there is something I can do through my own energy essence and blueprint, through love, that will probably shift the energy of that situation. Probably pretty significantly.
Okay, I want to make a distinction right now, because we're both coming to something very important. And I just want I like the way you expressed from your current perspective how you're interacting with that situation. But I'd like to ask you, in any case, where is your energy inside you? Where is your emotion? What is your response inside of you in observation of that?
So just to clarify, you're specifically asking me.
Yes. Where is your energy? What are you feeling in that moment in response to that?
This is a really good question and a really good way to expand on this topic, because you'll notice I talked about it was an observation of an energetic exchange. I was not activated by it to be in fight mode, to go pick a fight with someone else, to get involved in the fight. There was nothing within me whatsoever that allowed that to charge me personally into participating in that energy exchange in the way in which it was happening. There are many options and choices that I have. I mean, I could literally turn around and walk away like it never happened. I can just somehow put some love in the field.
That's what I want to get to.
Shift the energy.
Let me be really clear,
I have
because
options.
you started to get into options for action, which I think we should talk about. But is there any scenario where you, inside your physical form, start feeling negative emotion about what you're observing? Or are you remaining positively focused about the world you're experiencing, including the situation there? And this is an important distinction because you are, by virtue of your awareness of that situation, you are in relationship to it and responsible to it with your energy. And your emotional system is your indicator of the quality of your investment. And people need to understand this.
Absolutely. Yes, yes. I was, before you asked that question, I was actually hearing like a real world example of how that may have been addressed in a past paradigm, if you will, in our conditioning and our programming. Things I've actually witnessed and seen in my lifetime of somebody walking up to that situation and saying, okay, let's duke it out. Let's just fight it out. That's just a real basic example. That is not what I'm encouraging anyone to do. I'm just saying that that is one way someone might interfere or intervene or interject their own energy. You know, you might have someone who's very set in that being a resolution. Let's just fight it out. See how you come out. Because there are, for example, there are people that might think, okay, that's actually going to resolve something. You're going to get it all out on the table. You're going to air your laundry. You're going to say what caused all that, blah, blah, blah. But are you in the exact same energy that they're in? Yes. Are you perpetuating the exact same energy that they are projecting? Yes. So, I mean, I don't even think that way, so that's not at all where my energy would go. But I'm just saying that there are such a vast array of options that people could take. But to support what Jared is saying, I completely agree and resonate. I'm not emotionally charged by that. And I can't even say how long it's been since I would have been. My journey took me into a place of, this is actually something that's coming in as you're speaking this and asking the question, is that it starts with things happening outside of you. And I never really thought about it that way until you spoke that. But how are you coming into that situation, and how are you being responsible with energy or not responsible? How are you responding? And when you start doing that with circumstances outside of yourself that have nothing to do with you, for example, a confrontation on the street between two people has absolutely nothing to do with me. And then over time, you begin taking that into, oh, I was personally, to take the scenario a little further, oh, I was personally activated by that. That may have triggered a memory within me, that may have triggered something within me that causes me to be reactionary and to create the same energy. So I feel like that's what we're talking about here is it's an evolution of our, I want to recall the word you used earlier.
You know, I never remember what I
It's
said.
escaped me, so let me see if I can paraphrase.
I never remember what I said.
I know. Same here. We just allow it to move through us. But I do recall it because the word I was thinking when you said it was to integrate and embody. And you were talking about this process, if you will, that we go through because we are integrating it, we're embodying it, we're grounding it into the humanness that we are as a divine being in form. So that's part of the quote process. Again, I can't recall how you said it, but it was wonderful how you said it. But that's the energy of it, is you are allowing the process, the evolution of that, because you were talking about you can have the most divine, life-changing epiphany and have complete clarity and absolute knowing of the divinity that is you. but you're going to go through experiences as a human, as one in form, incarnate, to integrate that and bring that into the body. Your body is actually changing, as you said. Your body is actually changing. That means your cells are changing, your DNA strands are changing, your neural pathways in your brain are changing. And so there will be experiences of evolution. I'm going to use that word again, of how this might play out for you.
And
I feel like I stayed on topic, yet I'm not so sure I did.
Everything's
I
on
may have
topic.
gone a long way
And
around.
so what I'll add to that too is you may begin to understand that everything you experience becomes opportunity. Everything becomes opportunity for you, for you, and everyone else. Mm-hmm. It's really beautiful. So where I'd like to take us next, and of course we may spiral and circle back around, but I'm going to make a suggestion for the new metric. So you've suggested that sometimes people feel like they're looking for a way to measure and figure out if they're doing the work, if they're on the path, is it working? So the new metric is the way you feel. So if anyone who's hearing this, if you can understand that you are an energetic being and you are an eternal energetic being, and you existed at the beginning of this universe, and the energy that is you will continue indefinitely, and you are here in this incarnation in a brief period of time, physically focused for a little while, but there is a broader, non-physical, expanded part of you. If you can understand those things, and then you can begin to understand that your emotional system is designed to be an indicator of your alignment with your true self, your higher self, your source self, your I am presence. All of those words can be interchanged. Use whatever phrase you wish. You've come in with this emotional guidance system to indicate to you in real time in each moment where your alignment is or not with the broader non-physical source self that is you, that is always here with you and always focused with you in each of these moments. So if you feel negative emotion, that means that you have strayed a bit from your alignment with your source, because your source never feels negative emotion about anything. If you feel positive emotion, that means you are moving more toward coherence and alignment with the whole of who you really are. Now, this goes back to what we were talking about, the paradigm shift that you are going to be subject to. Our culture, the one that I live in, doesn't teach us what I just said. I had to go out and learn those things for myself and then test them. I'll let you speak a bit to this, Terri. How do you feel about everything I just expressed?
Yes, we do have to go out and learn this. And this morning, I actually was addressing a message to somebody. This has actually come up quite a bit, probably over the last few weeks, with various conversations, different people, different ages, different walks of life. It just keeps coming up. And so I feel this is a good place that I could speak to this. The different tools, modalities, systems, languages, etc., that maybe myself and Jared have explored in our own development and really moving into that higher self, I am presence, and knowing the divine being that we are. They aren't necessarily the end all be all to say, okay, I find a system or a language or a modality or a culture or a teaching or whatever, and that is everything. We both, I can speak, I feel like I can speak, we both have explored many, many different things that have served in a manner that have allowed us to have more and more self-awareness, become more and more self-realized, because through each thing you can gain a little bit more, glean a little bit more insight to that divine higher self that you are. But they are really powerful ways to do that. So there's no one path at all. There's no one way, one method. And the world, of course, is still teaching you that there is. So even many who are saying, okay, we haven't been taught this in society, but I have a way. I have a new way. I have a new path, a new paradigm, a new template. Let's try this one. There still can be, I'm not saying there always is, but there still can be the energy behind it of the history, the historical paradigms and templates that we've already been exposed to. So for example, I spoke to someone earlier today. If you are constantly working on clearing from your energetic field what you do not desire, and you are not replacing it with the frequencies that you do desire, you are not shifting anything. You are perpetuating, you are creating momentum around the same energy which created the quote problem or the issue or what it is that you don't desire. So, like Jared was saying earlier, if you are having a reaction, an emotion, a thought, any of that you do not desire, that makes you feel like you're in a negative space, a dense space, a heavy space, then you are definitely not in alignment with the divinity that you are. So clearing what you don't desire can be a part of a process, but it again cannot be the end all be all. And you can clear all day long. You can clear all day long. You can release all day long. You can do that for eons and get no different result unless you then bring in, okay, what is it I do want? What is it I do desire? How can I bring in the higher vibrational frequencies? Because if you're not doing that to complement so the first one basically is a lot of the deprogramming. If you're not doing something to support the deprogramming, if you're not doing something over here to support the reprogramming, if you will, the remembering, the stepping into the essence that you are, then you're just staying in the same pattern and the same template or the same paradigm. There's many words you could put to it. So my invitation is always, as Jared said earlier, I completely 100% speak to this in every conversation, is that everything is an opportunity. Everything is an opportunity, and I extend it with another word to people, and that therein lies the invitation to say, am I seeing in my life an outpicturing of what it is I really desire. What allows me to have those positive emotions and thoughts and experience of life.
Or have I conjured the good feeling of the idea within my own consciousness so that I'm actually not attached to it becoming physically manifest? That's big, because if you can cultivate an awareness of your emotional system, and I'll go back to and say a little bit about what Terri was saying about looking within and clearing conditions and paradigms. A lot of that stuff is in the mind, those structures that you have, the belief structures. So that process can be really fun. So do you know how you feel about the process you're engaging in? Does it feel good for you to root out and get rid of past paradigms and stuff that's not serving you? If it feels good, go for it. If it doesn't feel good, as Terri said, if it's feeling negative and dense and you're holding yourself in that space because you think this is what I should do in order to proceed along my spiritual path, I should root out all my shadows and conquer them. If you're feeling negative, you're not serving yourself. Go take a nap. Now, going back to what Terri was saying about the relationship between your desire, your idea of what you would like to have outpictured in your experience. Yes, of course, it's brilliant to be able to participate in the manifestation of the physical world that we all share in, and to have things like, oh, I'd like to have this, or I'd like to experience that, or, I need a partner or whatever. But the pre-manifestational phase of that happens within you. And I'm telling you, because I have lived this for the last 7, maybe I need to start saying 8 years now. The very, very, very first thing is to be aware of your emotional system and to be able to cultivate this sense of satisfaction and eagerness and excitement within you about the idea, and not get so attached to like looking out and noticing its absence, because then you're solidifying its absence. This is a very internal process. So, like, going back to the opening of our conversation, like looking outside you and using any sense perception as your metric for the success is a no-no. Don't do that.
Yes. It's staying in the energetics that actually created what it is that you're observing that you don't want to experience. And let me add to this. Someone might be thinking, and I've also had this conversation with people recently. What about what is happening in the world that I don't have anything to do with? In other words, there's these things happening that I do not desire to happen, that that humanity does not desire to happen, and as a whole, but I didn't create it. I didn't do it. I didn't create or commit a heinous act, if you will. I'm just quoting what some things are that are being said out there. So how can me being self-responsible and taking care of my own spiritual journey have any impact on that whatsoever?
Okay, so when you realize that everything is energy, as Terri said, and that you are an energetic being in oscillation, and that you are not distinct or separate from the energetic field around you, you are not separate from source energy. This is all key because you begin to understand that it may not be something that you directly manifested as a single individual autonomous being. You are participatory to collective manifestation. That's part of coming into a physical life experience here, is that you are one of many, the divine in plurality as all beings. So stop thinking of yourself, like, at least for a moment. Okay. The next step to that is to realize that you are responsible to anything that you are aware of. You are responsible with your energy to, not for, you are responsible to anything that you come to be aware of. And so if you come to be aware of someone or something, then your energy is invested in it. It becomes like it's part of you. And so how do you respond with your energy? I'll go back to what I said. Do you know how you feel? Are you in love? Because if you find the frequency of love as yourself, then that is how you respond to what you experience. Does it make you angry?
Mm-hmm.
If it makes you angry, then you are progressing anger, and that is the response that you are offering. You must cultivate an awareness of the way you feel. Now, don't be hard on yourself if you see something and you have this initial emotional response. You don't clear out all of your conditioning overnight. But if you're aware of it, then you can gently pivot. Or if you can't change the way you're feeling and you're looking at the thing, then stop looking at it. And I'm going to make this statement, which I think Terri can respond to this. You serve the expansion of collective consciousness best when you find a way to feel good. And it doesn't matter what the subject is that you're giving your attention to that makes you feel good. If you're giving your attention to butterflies and flowers and that causes you to feel good or ecstatic or joyful or whatever positive emotion, that is more productive for the collective than to give your attention to something and to try to fix it when you feel bad about what you're experiencing. Because your energy is solidifying and contributing to the form of this thing that you say is an atrocity that you do not want.
There was a time in my journey where I would say with absolute conviction, everything is not rainbows and unicorns. And I will expand upon that to say that is doing this journey of becoming more self-aware, becoming more self-realized, knowing thyself, going in and looking at the identities that you have adopted, that you have created, that you have held as a strong belief. I am not ever going to tell anybody that the experience of that is all rainbows and unicorns and all easy. However, I will say, to support what Jared just said, So to back up before I say that, I think that in my delivery of that, as well as in my belief of that, is that yes, there were layers of, well, you have to go through all the sadness, all the anger, all the gruesomeness, all the depression, all the anxiety, all the stress. So by saying everything is not all rainbows and unicorns, I was not spiritually bypassing my work. However, I was really committed to it, really committed to allowing every single emotion to be fully expressed, fully experienced, fully felt. So it would take me longer to come back to the vibrational frequencies that were in alignment with really all of who and what I am. It wasn't that it was wrong. It wasn't that another way is right. It took me longer. And we talked about this recently in going through the universal principles. So the rhythm was slower with that energy behind it. So when people say it's hard, it's hell, it's whatever you're going to label it, there's a part of me that can say, I can understand that. I can resonate with that. I've been there. I've done it. I've lived it. I've experienced it. As Jared said earlier, we've done it. I can also say it's so fast now, so fast, because I have been committed to these universal principles, to understanding them, to applying them, to knowing myself, and to doing, as Jared said, and as we both learned from Abraham Hicks and many others back in the day, so to speak, that it's not what is making you feel good that's important. And I just want to say, like a personal example here, like a really everyday 3D example. I'm getting ready to go on a long 5-month expedition. There are aspects of that are very exciting. I've been getting everything ready. A lot of prep work, a lot of projects, a lot of planning. It's a lot of different moving parts. That's what I'm trying to say. A lot of moving parts at one time, but it's very exciting overall. That keeps me inspired and motivated to continue to work towards the physical manifestation of that project. It's exciting. So if there's what somebody might perceive as a setback, for example, parts are hard to get, it's okay. So we'll just leave a little later. There's ways you can look at that, or you can get completely tied up about it and say, this is completely against what I had planned. This is against the idea that I had, all of that. So, but because most of the time, there have been exceptions, obviously, but most of the time I've been able to stay in the excitement of that energy and that creation and the manifestation of that, as well as looking at what, like visions of how that might look or how I might integrate all of my life with that. Those keep me in a very high vibe, excitable, inspired, empowered, motivated frequency. So when there is something happening in the world, and I'm over here talking about this, there are going to be people that think, how could you miss what's going on in the world? You're completely ignoring it. You're focused on yourself, and you're focused on your creations and your purpose. And so again, that ties back to the beginning of the conversation. That is programming. It is programming that teaches you that you are to also be in that lack energy, in that separateness consciousness, in that heaviness, in that density. It's not saying you don't have compassion, you don't have empathy for the people involved, for humanity as a whole. And I wanted to make that very clear. You can have empathy, you can have compassion, you can have love. It's all love. And you can hold the energetic frequency that you desire.
I have to interject here and make this very clear.
Go ahead. Yeah.
It is because you love humanity that you commit yourself to your own alignment. If you understand
Yes.
yourself as an energetic being in participation to the manifestation of the world you see around you, and that your alignment with your source is the only way that you can serve. Can you understand this? Like, if you are misaligning yourself and going into a chronic state of negative emotion on behalf of the people of the world, this is tough medicine, but this is misguided. You are being misguided, and you are actually, this is a detriment. Please understand this.
Yes.
And it goes back to, what is the quality of your consciousness? And you know by the way you feel in the investment of your consciousness. Are you uplifting everyone you see around you? Are you uplifting yourself? If you're going into negative emotion and reactivity or response, and then moving into physical action and as an attempt to fix things, you're actually solidifying the things that we say we do not want.
Yes.
And I don't just know this because some higher dimensional being channeled it through a person. As Terri said, I have lived this and I've watched these things play out, so that I felt like I was being responsible with my communication of these principles. I've watched what happens in my life when I get really down and stay there. I've watched the results of that in the manifestation of my own experience, and then I've also watched what it can potentially do for the people around me. I've pulled everybody down.
Yeah.
And then I've also seen what happens when I do what I have to do to align with the whole truth of what I really am. And everybody's been uplifted.
Yes.
So this is not selfish. This is divine selflessness.
It absolutely is. I recently thought of, there's more than one, but I'm going to share one example of an experience with a student and a client probably about 3 years ago, maybe. Time doesn't really always, it's not always in my memory or my field, but a few years ago, said to me, I used to think that you were a very weak person. I came to you because I liked what you had to say. I liked the results I got, but I felt like you were so passive and you were just a really weak person. And I'm here today to tell you you're the strongest person I've ever met in my entire life. And my response was, thank you for seeing me, and thank you for coming to know that about yourself. Because if you see it in me, you see it in yourself. That's really what it comes down to. So thank you for allowing me to be a mirror for you to see that, to hold space for others, to sit here and listen to all the things that you're here to share with me, that you are intending to heal and transmute and shift out of and away from, that has held you in this negative emotion and energy and space. That is doing the work, so to speak. That is it. That is it. It is. And of course, a response like that does not even create a reaction for me other than, oh my gosh, I'm so glad that they see
The
it.
most delicious
Not
thing
about
in the
me. They
world
see it
is
about themselves.
to witness someone in a moment of realization or epiphany. There's just nothing better than that. Yeah.
Yes. Yes. And it's just so, I see, I've been really blessed with the experiencing that. I say I've been blessed, but let me clarify. I don't mean that was a gift somebody handed to me. Somebody didn't hand that to me tied up in a pretty bow in a nice gold box that I unwrapped. I created it by being deliberate, being intentional, being committed. And everybody has that opportunity.
I'd like to go back and come at this question of collective manifestation and response to what we see, our responses to what we see outpictured from a slightly different point of view, not really different, but just to express it in another way that someone else may be able to hear differently. So I want to ask a question, Terri, and I think we have already actually used this language in previous episodes, but it will mean something different in this conversation, perhaps. So I want to ask you, does source energy, the source of all manifestation, have negative emotion about what we perceive to be atrocities outpictured in our experience?
So I'm going to ask if you can ask that again. I had a little bit of audio lag.
Does source energy have negative emotion in response to or about the phenomenon that we experience in our reality that we would perceive to be atrocity? No. Did you hear those words? Source energy holds no bias. Source energy says yes to all of its creation. So when we say that you can come into a space where you are identified with the source aspect of yourself, what that means is that you are becoming identified with the aspect of you that holds no bias. Because if you are identified as source, you are in love. You are in love. And love doesn't exclude. The light doesn't discern it's going to shine on this but not that. The light gives itself freely to everything. And it is a journey to get to this place. Is it worth it? Yeah.
Absolutely. It's delicious.
So you will begin to realize that you are not defining atrocities. You are not claiming the history and the baggage and the idea of what that word means. It's just not there. And when you're in love, and you're in love with everyone and everything, then that is the gift of consciousness that you give. And for many of us, that is the highest the highest gift that we can offer in an incarnation is to realize that level of radical love. And if you are in that space, everyone and everything on an energetic level can receive it. They may not be able to say, oh my goodness, I've just felt this love from you, and consciously respond, but their energy responds. So when I've said in a previous episode, when you vibrate in the frequency of love and the person next to you vibrates in a frequency of love and your neighbor across the street vibrates in the frequency of love, that energy, the collective energy of those streams, they join up and strengthen each other and solidify, and it becomes a powerful force. And in that frequency, many things just go away.
Yes.
There's tremendous service in that. And you don't have to get out and beat the streets. I'm not saying that people who are in alignment with their source aren't going to be called to physical action, because you will. But from that level of alignment, you will know how to be effective.
Yes. And I'm really glad that you added that point, because we've talked about that before in the episode about the art of being. There is the beingness, the being, but that will lead to the inspired action for you. But that inspired action, to support what we're saying today, is not going to look like what you're used to seeing in society out there.
It may or it may not. Like how it actually manifests is far less important than the energy of it. You will realize like okay, I'm gonna bring this really home. You could take the same physical action out of alignment and not accomplish your goal, and in fact strengthen the thing you don't want. Or you could take the same action from a space of alignment with the whole of who you are, and it would work. Because it's not about the action.
Yes. And correct. And I guess to support what I was saying is it is about the energy of it. Yes. It's not going to look like the energy. Okay, let me say it this way. It's not going to look like the energy in which the action that has activated you
and
created.
I think and before we hit record, and you may have actually suggested this in our recording as well, it will be less dependent on what you believe you should do based on cultural suggestions or your memory or your past conditioning. It might look like that, or it might look like something completely different. Like, so in the past we think, well, this is how I'm supposed to behave as a responsible citizen of a country or a city or a county. Like, I should go do this thing to indicate whatever. So when you accomplish alignment first, you may realize that the action you're called to, like if you try to use your rational mind to understand it, it may make no sense to you. But it's just, I'm feeling this impulse to go over here and talk to this person or do this thing. Or maybe you look out and you see something that like a billboard that has these words on it, and it activates something in you that leads you down this rabbit trail. And all of a sudden, the thing you perceive to be a problem is all of a sudden resolved. So energy first. And if you're on this path, don't doubt. Trust the claims you're making. Trust the way you feel. Trust that it's important to know how you feel.
I want to tie together talking about this new metric that we've introduced for you to consider today is that it, as Jared's been saying, it really comes down to how do you feel? And that is, for those who are asking me and others and seeking, what is a measurement? How can I measure my journey? How can I measure my growth and development? How can I measure my awakening, my ascension, whatever you're asking, my progress, to tie back to the beginning? How can I measure my progress? And that is the answer, is it is how you feel. And so anything that so I'm going to tie this back to a conversation Jared and I've had pre-recording that led to the energy around all of this. If you are looking outside of yourself for that measurement, you won't find it, because nothing outside of you can show you how you feel. That is an internal process. It is so internal that is why it will constantly seem like seeking, struggling, searching, questioning, because it's all within you. And I want to leave you with a message that was brought to me 2013. One of my first guides that came in during this was Mother Teresa. And she took me through this long journey, and there was a cave involved and all that. I was going through a guided yoga nidra meditation. And she said to me, and it's not the first time I first got the message prior. She had handed me a white envelope, not labeled, sealed up, and handed it to me and told me that I would know when the time was to know what was within the envelope. So this time came, and what was in the envelope was a message that said, everything you need is within you. Everything you need is within you. And I'll go one step further. This could be another conversation for another time, but just to add, that is just an aspect of me telling myself that. That's my higher self telling myself that. Mother Teresa is not separate from me, or whoever your guides are, or your ascended masters, or your archangels, or your teachers, your guides. They are aspects of you as you. But it's okay to have them in the journey
whatever
of
language
the knowing
inspires
of that. I had
you,
many. I've had
go
many.
for it.
Yes. But yes, and so even though I knew that to be true at that time, how that evolved and how that moved through my journey over those next, 9 years was, okay, the more I knew that and embodied that, the more everything became that. It's all within me. And I'm tying that back to what Jared said. So when you've heard me say that phrase, it's all within you, you got to look within to see. And, so we can talk all day long about what is outpictured, but our invitation all along has been, that's to look back within. And that to be is what I feel we're tying it to, is how do you feel? That is your meter, your metric,
and when
your
you
measure.
accomplish this core stability after this journey, the journey never ends. I don't want to speak to it as though, but as you embark on this journey, as you continue further, and you accomplish this core stability, you will begin to look out and realize that it doesn't matter what you see, because you have achieved this core stability. So whatever happens out there, it can be wonderful. You still have experiences, but you have accomplished this identity, this stability within you. And in fact, I'm inspired to a quote from Paul Selig. The best definition of sovereignty that I've ever read or experienced. Sovereignty is a withstanding of change in the world around you while maintaining the identity of the one who will not be moved. So the world is just twirling around, and you know who you are. And then ask yourself, what impact am I having on the world as that one?
Yes. Something that I read a few days ago was that if you believe that you don't have clarity on your purpose and your path, your feelings, any and all of that, it's an aspect of you, an aspect of your ego that is telling you that you don't have clarity, that you have confusion, that you don't have focus. And that again is that conditioning. The doubts, you said don't have doubts. That's a doubt. You're creating doubt. Does that mean 24/7 I'm going to be fully consciously aware of all of my guidance and all of my thoughts and all of my feelings? There's going to be times I have questions, but I know where I'm going to find them, and I know to ask them.
The question, or the questioning and the doubt, first of all, is an indicator that there's an answer. Because there can't be a question without an answer. The second is that you have been inspired. That's a beautiful thing. Every doubt, every question is opportunity. So when you ask that question,
yes,
say thank you for the experience of the question, and trust that the answer will be fully realized by you in perfect timing.
Perfect timing is a concept many do not, I want to say do not know, I want to say it a different way, have not consciously been aware of having experienced. It's trust, it's faith in that feeling you're having, and aligning with your higher self, the divinity that is within you. Yeah.
Your higher self is beyond time.
Yes. And a dear friend of mine calls it, I've shared this before on here, but she calls it divine timing. And I think it's a beautiful way to put it. It's going to happen in the timing that allows all
for
the
you and
frequencies
everyone
to
you
be
interact
aligned
with and everything around you. It is perfect. And you can know that to be. It is just perfect. Perfect unfolding. And you cannot get off your path.
Yeah.
Doesn't matter what you do, that's your path.
I mentioned earlier, you can determine if it's going to take a really long time or if it's going to go a little faster. You can influence
Either
it,
way,
but you can't,
it's still yours.
Can't deny
and
it.
it is perfect.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
Because source energy only says one thing, only speaks one language. Yes to all my creations and all their choices.
Yes. Well, I appreciate you having this conversation with me today. It's been evolving into the divine timing and will also be released out to the world in divine timing. So thank you for that. It feels important in the work that we are doing the conversations we are having, the experiences we are having, all of that's being brought into our energy field is for this information to be shared and to unfold in divine timing. So yes,
I agree. So I'll just
wonderful.
leave us with this from my part, as an expression to everyone. I would like to express my gratitude for your commitment to your own journey. And I would like to express my gratitude for your willingness to be here on 33 North 96 West with us whenever this finds you. And I would like for you to know that I love you. And I love you when you are frustrated and angry and distracted. And then I also love you when you're in joy and peace and happiness and prosperity and all the spots in between.
Beautiful. I received that and say thank you. Extend my gratitude to Jared for today's conversation again, for our channels, platforms, all of that, our creations, co-creations. And I want to say to those watching or listening, I really do honor your journey, and I honor you. I honor your commitment. I honor you moving through these shifts, the transitions, all of that in the process of becoming more self-aware, more self-realized, marrying your humanness with your divinity and being that divine being that you are. And I do love you, and I appreciate you. And I just want to remind you that if you have committed to this, you are on the path, you are doing the work. And love yourself and honor yourself for that. Have faith and belief in yourself and in your journey.
Delicious. Shall we leave it right there? Okay. See y'all next time.
That feels good to me. Thank you all.